All right, so we're going to pick up where we left off in the last episode. For those of you that are following along, we're going to keep talking about the linebacker position. And right off the bat, I do need to make one quick correction about what it is that I was talking about in that episode, because I started explaining terms on the defensive side of the football to you guys, particularly in regard to the linebacker position. And like the unqualified idiot that I am, I did lead you down the wrong path in some way. So we had spoken about linebackers, their assignments, and the difference between those assignments in a 2 linebacker set versus a 3 linebacker set. And where I was wrong was in, what would you call it, like semantics to some degree. What I had said was that the Sam linebacker and the Mike linebacker are in at all times, whether it be a 2 linebacker or a 3 linebacker set. And it's the Sam that takes on pass coverage responsibilities in your 2 linebacker set. That's where I was wrong. It is the will linebacker that does that. So in a 2 linebacker set, you have a Mike and a Will. A Mike and a Will are the 2 constants in a 2 linebacker and a 3 linebacker set, not the Sam and the Mike, the Will and the Mike. It's the Will that is always going to be doing your pass coverage responsibilities, and your Mike that is going to be responsible for more downhill play. Of course, broad stroke, general rule, every linebacker needs to cover throughout the course of a given game. And then it's on your 3 linebacker sets that the Sam then comes in and is somewhat of an extension of the Mike linebacker in terms of his skill set and what you want him to do. Again, play downhill, attack the line of scrimmage, react, fucking hit somebody, bring a little bit of the nasty into your defense. Once again, broad stroke. I'm just getting you to where you have to be to have a base understanding of what it is that you're looking at. With all of that said, there were things in that episode that I told you that were right. Most of them were right. One of which, of course, was the general responsibilities of the guys. Again, Sam and Mike, downhill, Will, pass coverage. General rule, you're there. That's what you need to know. But then 2, the implication that the Colts will be running 2 linebacker sets more often under Lou Anarumos than Gus Bradley, we have no reason to believe that that isn't true either. Now, this was challenged by a longtime listener, and to be fair to that listener, when I said that, I was simply going off of what we had been told by Chris Ballard up to this point. He directly told us in one of his draft press conferences, one of many. I mean, you get more talking during the draft from Chris Ballard than you get all year, but neither here nor there. He straight up told us, he said, Lou Anarumos going to be running 2 linebackers more often than Gus Bradley. But with that said, I'm certainly not above being challenged, especially if the evidence in the game suggests something other than what Chris Ballard is telling us. And after all, we are just learning here. I mean, the whole point of what we do over here is to try to push this discussion further. We try to find the truth. We try to be on this channel just a little bit closer to the right take than some of the other people around. That's all it is that we're trying to do. We're trying to create a smarter Colts fan base. And again, to be fair to that listener that challenged me, the Colts did primarily run 2 linebacker sets out there with Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, even if the defense was listed as a base 4-3 under Gus Bradley. So it's a fair thing to question. It's a fair thing to challenge. With that said, I now have more practical evidence to suggest that Smooth Lou Gabagoo, is going to be running those 2 linebacker sets a little bit more often than Gus Bradley. Now, for the record, unless there's something that I don't know about that exists, there is really no place that is going to tell you flat out, hey, your team lined up in 4-3 this amount of the time, your team lined up in 4-2-5 this amount of the time, your team lined up in 3-4 this amount of the time. If that place exists, feel free to give it to me, because from what I understand, PFF will give you some numbers that are going to help you infer and figure those things out for yourself, but they're not going to flat just give it to you straight like that. Now, again, I may be wrong, and if so, I stand corrected. But from what I understand, you're not going to get anything concrete in terms of how much you lined up in each specific formation. So to know that, you have to go watch, especially when there's so many factors at play, like who did the team play against? What is the opposing offense trying to do? Who was healthy for that offense? Who wasn't healthy for that offense? For example, if your team is versing the Baltimore Ravens and you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry out there, even if you are a team that runs 2 linebacker sets all the time, chances are you're going to go out there and run 3 linebacker sets a little bit more often because you want a little bit more help against the run. And then on the contrary, if you're to verse the Cincinnati Bengals, who throw the ball all day, every day, you're going to be in two linebacker sets, if not even a one linebacker set, more often because ultimately that team's going to try to throw the ball 40, 50 times. You want guys in coverage. So there's a million moving parts. That's the point I'm trying to present to you. And without actually watching the tape, it's tough to really know. Will Lou Anarumos run more two linebacker sets than Gus Bradley, or will he not? There are just things that the stats are not going to tell you, which is why I always stress the importance of trusting your eyes more than the numbers. It's not to say that the numbers have no place, but you need to use a combo of the numbers and what it is that you're looking at to come to a proper conclusion. Okay? If the numbers back up what you saw, then feel free to say, hey, we like these numbers. But you can't just have not seen something, defer to the numbers, and then come out with 100% certainty that you're right, because there are plenty of times where the numbers mislead people. The numbers, despite what many say, numbers don't lie. Numbers lie all the damn time. But when it comes to watching things, the problem that I run into, much like you, is I have a fucking job. So I can't just watch every single game. Plus, I do this podcast. So if I watch the Colts game, and the only game that I watch every single snap of on a Sunday is the Indianapolis Colts game, if I watch the Colts game and then I'm going to record an episode after the fact, how am I supposed to watch the 4 o'clock games too? How am I supposed to watch all of the Sunday night game if I have work the next day? Do you get my point? So if I am to sit here and seek out more, if I have to essentially, if I say I'm trying to watch all the Bengals shit, I have to seek that out. I'm not just going to catch that on a Sunday. That's my point. I'm only human. I may be a genius when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts. I have never been wrong about the Indianapolis Colts in my entire life, but I am a human nonetheless. All of that said, I don't want to ramble on for too long. I did watch some tape. That's my point. From the last episode to this episode, I made sure to watch some tape on the Colts defense last year and the Bengals defense last year, and I found some stuff that I think you're going to find interesting. So here's what we're going to do today. Number one, I want to present some evidence outside of just what Chris Ballard told us that we can expect to see more two linebacker sets out of Lou Anarumos than we did Gus Bradley. And from there, I want to talk a little bit more about why the Colts struggled so much in those two linebacker sets last year, and then revisit and dive deeper into what we're looking at with our current linebacker core as it comes this season, and then what we have available to us there, what exactly the team needs to fill out in that room. And spoiler alert, I think you're going to feel much better about what we have to offer, at least right now in the linebacker room, than you do, I don't know, before you listen to the episode. But before we get into that, you know what it is. My name is Justin. This right here is the Behind the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone watching and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're on our way to 4,000 subscribers over here on the YouTube channel. We want to get there by the start of next season. So if you keep coming back, enjoying the show, or perhaps today's your first day here, hit that subscribe button. You'll never miss another episode again, but no pressure. I'll be here doing this for a very long time. For the audio listeners, leave a five-star review. Let the people know how much you're enjoying the show. But most importantly, if you're going to engage in the comment section, be civil with one another. You don't know what the person on the other end of the keyboard is going through today. We want to make sure, as I said earlier, to push the discussion further. So if someone says something that you feel is incorrect, challenge them politely. Allow it to be an opportunity for you guys to engage in a little bit of civil discourse, but keep it there. No need for the insults and the degeneracy. We don't do it over here. That's not our thing, at least when it comes to the comment section. We may be degenerates in other ways, but that is not one of them. Discussion about the Colts, not one of those things. So with that said, we have gotten the housekeeping out of the way, and we go back to the regularly scheduled programming. And we're going to start with that comparison between that Colts defense and that Bengals defense, and to really do a true comparison between those teams when it comes to saying, okay, who's going to be more likely to run a two linebacker set. There is a fly in my room. I don't know if you could hear it on the microphone. If the buzzing is there, it'll be evidence, but that is a ginormous fly. I mean, that thing's like the Grover Stewart of flies. My goodness gracious. Not for anything. That thing could provide us depth at defensive tackle. Good grief. Hopefully that thing doesn't take me down while I'm trying to record this fucking episode. But all right, enough distractions. My undiagnosed ADD coming in very, very strong. So with that said, I couldn't watch all the games, so I decided to start by looking for a common opponent. I'm essentially going to bring you through my line of thinking. I'm going to bring you through the research process I did. So I said, okay, who was a common opponent between the Colts and the Bengals last year? We got the Steelers. The Colts played Pittsburgh in week 4. The Bengals played Pittsburgh in week 13. So if you watch those games right off the bat, one thing you're going to notice, quite a few three linebacker sets out of the Indianapolis Colts. Yes, primarily two linebacker sets, but you did get quite a bit of Jalen Carley's there as well. Now, if you are to watch The Bengals versus the Steelers, that was two linebackers, basically if not the entire game, like 98% of the game. And again, I watched the whole deal. Couldn't really find much of any three linebacker sets in that game. Now, of course, this is not exactly a 1-to-1 comparison. So I'm even going to challenge myself in that. So I went a little bit further because the Steelers were starting Justin Fields against the Colts. The Steelers were starting Russell Wilson against the Bengals. So in terms of what those guys bring at the quarterback position, it's a little bit different. Fields is a guy they were designing runs for. So in theory, it would make sense right off the bat as a default that you would go in there and play a little bit more three linebacker sets because you want a little bit of help against the quarterback run. So from there, the question becomes, is there something more comparable than common opponent? Is there something that the Bengals played against that was more similar to the Week 4 Steelers than the Week 13 Steelers that the Bengals played? And what I came to was not the Ravens, because I know the Ravens, some of you are saying, well, what did they do against the Ravens? The Ravens are a combo that demands a third linebacker to be on the field. So that was almost a cheat code. That would completely skew it because no one's going to go in against the Ravens and not run three linebackers. When you have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, you have no choice, okay? But what I did, I came up on the Giants in week 6. The Bengals versus the Giants in week 6. And much like the Steelers, that is a below average offense that designs quarterback runs. That's when they still had Danny Dimes, who is now with the Indianapolis Colts. That's a team who was designing runs for their quarterback to try to open things up. So in theory, the Steelers offense that the Colts played in week 4 is as similar as you can get to the Giants offense that the Bengals played in week 6. So I went in and said, okay, was there a notable difference in the way those defenses played those two teams? Once again, in that game, the Bengals did not go into three linebacker sets nearly as much as the Colts went into three linebacker sets against the Pittsburgh Steelers with Justin Fields at quarterback. Hell, the Bengals even went into one linebacker sets at time in that Giants game. So despite Jones being amongst the top guys in the league at the quarterback position when it came to designed runs going into that game, the Bengals said, you know what? Nope, we're not going to play into that. We'll continue to do what it is that we do in these two linebacker sets. And then if you're to take all of that stuff and you look at the snap percentages for both the Colts and the Bengals linebackers, particularly the third linebacker snap percentage, when the top two linebackers on each respective team were healthy. So when Zaire and EJ were healthy and when Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson were healthy, just to be clear on that, it lines up with what it is that I saw. The Colts third linebacker was on the field more often as per the snap percentages than the Bengals third linebacker. And then also just to couple it even more, a little bit more stats, even though I said stats don't always tell you the story, I also said, hey, you couple what you saw with the stats and now you feel a little bit better. The snap percentages for the top two linebackers, aka for Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, were higher, even if marginal, than the snap percentages for Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. So all around, just a higher snap percentage on defense for the Colts linebacker position, even as you go past 3, even as you get into 4 and 5. It's not a major difference, but over the course of a season, it will add up. And again, that includes that includes 2 games per season against the Baltimore Ravens from the Cincinnati Bengals, who in those games, and I did check to make sure I'm not out of my mind here and lying to you, yes, they played more 3 linebacker sets in those games against the Baltimore Ravens. So the question for the Colts as it pertained to the linebacker position was essentially, are you going to bring on a third linebacker or not? The difference in the question for the Bengals was, who will that second linebacker be that you have on the field? And in some cases, if you would have a second linebacker on the field at all, unless, of course, again, you're against the Ravens. So that I just wanted to bring to you as a little bit of something. Again, it's not to say that it's going to be like, oh, the Colts are playing way more 2 linebacker coverage now than they were then. But what was once like, okay, you can expect on a week-to-week basis to see 3 linebacker sets from the Indianapolis Colts, that is no more with Lou Anarumos. And that is clear in what you watch and the snap percentages. So now that we've gotten all of that stuff out of the way, I want to talk a bit about the Colts linebackers last year and the Colts linebackers this year, and we'll start with why I felt they struggled so much last year. And it really comes down to personnel, which also kind of lends to why EJ Speed isn't here and why it is that they like Jalen Carley so much. Because the Colts' full-time starters last year were Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. Zaire was playing the Mike, EJ Speed was playing the Will. Now, what do we say about the Will linebacker's responsibilities in a two linebacker set? Well, ideally, you want that to be the better pass coverage linebacker of the two. The problem is that EJ Speed did not at all fit that profile for the Colts. So, really, in a two linebacker set, when you're running nickel, one of your linebackers needs to be able to cover the damn tight end, the damn receivers, the damn field. They need to be able to cover somebody, right? And the Colts ultimately did not have a guy with enough experience to come in and do that. Now, they slowly worked Jalen Carley's in a little bit more, but he ended up getting hurt, okay? But we know that he projects much better into a will linebacker role than EJ Speed does. Did you know that Jalen Carley's, who is a safety converted to linebacker, fifth round rookie last year, ranked fourth while he was in amongst all qualifying linebackers in the NFL in terms of pass coverage as per Pro Football Focus? So that in part is what the Colts are so enamored with right now. But he has to stay healthy. That's going to be the challenge because, quite frankly, he got hurt last year. I mean, we have nothing else to go off of. Now, the other guy that if you're a Colts fans, you need to feel pretty good about, and you should start getting used to his name, Segun Olabi. This is a guy that I absolutely love. I love what I saw from him in limited snaps last year. I love what I saw from him in training camp. He was flying around. In training camp, you always go and you want to just find someone that pops off the field. Segun Olabi was that guy. Now, upon further review, we brought up something about Jalen Carley's in PFF. How about this? Segun Olabi last year ranked first of all qualifying linebackers in the NFL against the run. So right now, two no names on the Colts. You have a guy who, per PFF, is a top 5 pass coverage linebacker, and a guy who was the number 1 run stopping linebacker. You get my point. Run defense. That's pretty good, right? Now, that's not to say that Segun Olabi is the best run stopper at linebacker in football, and it's not to say Jalen Carley's is going to be a top 5 or guaranteed, because as the sample size ramps up, as you get more snaps, you average out to the mean to some degree, but at the same time, it certainly bodes well for what it is that you're looking at. And PFF, even if it's not the be all end all, that's a league wide standard to some degree when it comes to measuring these types of things. So Segun Olabi, outside of Jalen Carley's, is a linebacker that Colts fans really need to start getting excited about. In my personal opinion, he's a guy that projects real well if they were to ever go into a 3 linebacker set to come in and play some Sam for them. And then if Zaire Franklin, who did not miss a single fucking snap for this team last year, needs a sip of water, or perhaps he finally gets injured. I mean, he has been just a beacon of durability for this team. Segun Olabi could come in and cover for him as well. So I kind of like him, and I think that's the secret that the Colts are keeping is Segun Olabi. Now, the real issue comes for this team if Jalen Carley's gets hurt. Like, what the hell do you do if he were to go down at the will linebacker position? The answer right now is nothing certain. I could sit here and rave about the linebackers all day long. At the end of the day, there is a very valid case to be made that there's at least a question at depth for linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts. In fact, there's a case to be made that it's a flat out problem. And I'm certainly not going to sit here and challenge that because you have a bunch of guys that have proven absolutely nothing in this league. Now, the absence of an answer doesn't technically mean that the answer isn't there, but you certainly can't feel super comfortable about the depth at linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts as it currently stands. Now, to be fair, and I hate doing this because the guy is a 7th round pick. In fact, I say to be fair, it's almost unfair, but Hunter Waller may very well be next up after Jalen Carley's at that will linebacker position. The more I watch him, man, he's got everything you want out of a will linebacker in this league. He's fast. He was a tackling safety in college, led Wisconsin in tackles back-to-back year. And Wisconsin, make no mistake, that's big-time football, okay? If you could go in and lead that team in tackles and start for that team, you can play. It doesn't mean you're going to be a Pro Bowler or anything like that, but you certainly have a place in the league somewhere if you can do that for Wisconsin. And again, to my eye, the more I watch Hunter Waller, that dude looks like someone who could come in and contribute in the NFL. I think they like him as both a will linebacker and a box safety, essentially a safety that could come down and play somewhat of not quite the will linebacker position, but something relatively close to it in any given set. That's something we see Nick Cross do a lot, right? Point remains, though, Hunter Waller aside, the Colts don't have anyone that you can trust at depth. Point being, there's only 3 guys that you can feel confident in right now if you're an Indianapolis Colts fan, and that might be a stretch depending on who you ask. I mean, I might be being generous, but Sagan Olabe, Jalen Carley's, and Zaire Franklin, 2 of those guys aren't known by anyone that isn't an Indianapolis Colts fan. So it would be nice to have someone come in and compete for the will linebacker position for this team. Again, unless Olabe does a little bit more than even I think he can. Like if he's more multifaceted than we think he is, or they know something about another linebacker on this roster that we're quite not privy to, or not quite privy to because we just haven't seen what they've seen from these guys. Like we won't know that type of stuff till training camp. But as it currently stands, this team is about an injury away from having a real problem at the linebacker position. And it is something that we do need to keep an eye on. So that was an episode. My name is Justin. This right here was the Behind the Bench Colts podcast. And as always, go Colts.